and hopefully get some positive media coverage tomorrow and hopefully gain a few more votes, I would have expected that the Premier would have made an announcement as to the actual call or a date when the tenders for the construction were to be issued. We didn't hear that, Mr. Chair. Now, I'm sure that your predecessor was forced by the Minister of Finance to have withdrawn over $1 million from the centre a few years ago with the planning process. Had that, of course, not been done, the architectural work, the design work could have been completed before now, and the ground could have been broken. The concrete poured and steel being erected. It wouldn't be completed, not likely, but it could have been started. Now, I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit cynical, but now yet again, it looks like we're being told this is coming. The new thing is, in a brochure, you can put in a conceptual picture. Staff in the gallery, or no longer in the gallery, saw it as well. Big billboards or posters were unveiled showing these things. But there was no announcement as to the date when tenders would be called. Well, member from Cape Breton West said have to wait to see who the member's going to be, maybe. Well, Mr. Chair, you know, if they think that it's only going to benefit or affect them one way or the other in Cobequid, they're sadly mistaken. The member from Bedford Fall River, his residents deserve a new facility out there, as do mine. And you know, Mr. Chair, the residents from his constituency, the residents from the Beaverbank area, Mount Uniacke, Timberley, they have been receiving excellent service from the staff at the Cobequid Multi-Service Centre for years, under extremely difficult conditions. They deserve to be congratulated. And you know, Mr. Chair, that centre provides such excellent service and things like blood work and x-rays in such a timely manner. People not only from the immediate surrounding area use that facility. People from the valley, from the South Shore, and elsewhere come there to get those services done because they can get them often in a more timely fashion. The staff there are incredible. And what they have been able to do, Mr. Chair, they deserve the accolades of all of us. And as I said, Mr. Chair, if the previous Minister of Health hadn't had that money withdrawn, or maybe he volunteered to have it withdrawn, we'd be farther along. I want to know from the Minister, will there be something more tangible than the Premier standing for a photo op in front of a backdrop to re-announce what has been announced before? The former Minister of Health has made announcements on this too. Will there be something more concrete before the election's called? Will there be a selection of those, a shortlisting even, of those who are going to be asked to bid to construct this badly needed facility that is a model that others, as one of the speakers today correctly pointed out, New Brunswick has followed. Other places have studied that facility. It'd be nice if they had a more modern facility that could meet the needs to actually come and study, mind you. So I'm wondering if the minister could tell us, will there be something more concrete, something tangible, tenders being called, even if not awarded, before the gentleman who stands out there to get the photo op drops a writ? Do you have any kind of assurances, any kind of encouragement to give to the people who work in that facility and who receive the services through that facility?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Of course, I don't know when the election is going to be called, but the Capital District will be issuing a call for a tender on the architectural drawings, and that, if it hasn't been done already, is going to be done any day now. And once those are evaluated, then we'll look for someone to build the project. So that those detailed drawings will be coming very soon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Sackville-Cobequid.
So is the minister saying really it's all in the hands of the Capital District Health Authority to get that process and the timing and everything done?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Not exactly, Mr. Chair. Capital Health does take care of the processes, i.e., putting an ad in the newspaper for a facility in their district. But in terms of funding, we have a certain amount of funding set aside this year. Our share being nearly $4 million to accomplish, a great deal of work this year on that project. So the money is there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Sackville-Cobequid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, but the thing is, I remember money having been there before, and some of that money then, commitment wasn't broken. We're still committed to things. The money was just delayed. That happened. This government delayed the actions. And, here we have the Premier out there I'm sure the next election had absolutely nothing to do with his decision. Just, Mr. Chair, just like the Premier when he said that giving this $150 check to those Nova Scotians who make enough money to pay provincial income tax has nothing to do with the next election. Nothing whatsoever. And I've spoken to one or two Tories who actually believed him. Not many others. Mr. Chair, the services that are needed in that community need and deserve to be met. The minister knows, and knows very well, that center delivers them, and it's a wellness type of model, and it's designed, the system is designed not to hospitalize people, but to provide the services within the community. And it is a cost-effective way, a more cost-effective way of delivering those services. And what bothers me, and I'll accept if there are some delays for legitimate reasons. Reasonable people do. What I object to is politicizing. I'm not accusing the minister of politicizing it, but I object to politicizing essential delivery of services and the development of that center. And quite honestly, today's announcement, although, Mr. Chair, if somebody comes along and gives somebody a compliment, you never get tired, or most people don't get tired of hearing that compliment, no matter how many times it's given, by no matter how many different people. If somebody is going to be given a commitment or promise, good news, you always like to hear the good news, no matter how many times it's told. But you also want to see when there are things that are supposedly good news. You want to see the concrete commitments and actions that show that that good news is actually moving a step forward beyond political statements. And in today's announcement, quite honestly, I mean, that's a nice picture. I don't know if the minister had seen it before or not. Do you want me to send it over a copy so you can see what it looks like? Maybe on the pages. This is the only copy I've gotten. But I imagine a gentleman in the gallery has a few as well. So I'll let you have a look, Mr. Chair, at what, maybe give it to the Minister of Health, what the concept for the new center is going to look like.
Order. Are you tabling that document just so?
No, I just sent it over to the minister.
Okay.
I haven't got another copy, so maybe she can get another copy from somebody else, but I'll maybe get it back. Very attractive building.
Blue and white?
No, it's the silver colored, yeah. I haven't seen, well, I have seen a bluish tinged glass before. I haven't seen blue concrete yet, although it can be painted, Mr. Chair.
He's been wearing a blue shirt himself quite a bit lately.
It's a very impressive looking facility. But before I leave that topic and go on to something else briefly, I'm wondering if the minister can tell us, you already told me in here before that there was going to be about $5 million going towards that project. And now we hear about $4 million. That's when because it turns out one of those millions of dollars is actually from the foundation. And so $4 million of provincial money, but this year, and that's up to. It doesn't say it's all going to be used this year. We had money up to before that doesn't get expended, and then that money can make its way back into the system for the next year's announcements. Mr. Chair, but can you tell me anything concrete? What concrete additionally is going to happen other than announcements to assure the people that the facility will be going ahead before the Premier decides to go out and see what fate is going to be, or see what kind of verdict the voters in Nova Scotia are going to have on he and his government?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what we'll see this year is the completion of the detailed architectural drawings, a tender call for construction, and the beginning of construction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Sackville-Cobequid, you have 5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, and that's what we're going to see. But you didn't say which of those items we'll see before the election is called. So if we don't see anything before the election is called, I'll tell you, Mr. Chair, and I think I'm very fair to make this commitment, that if after the next election, Mr. Dexter, the leader of the official opposition, should happen to be Premier, I think, Mr. Chair, you can say without any hesitation that those commitments will be followed. They would be followed. But you know, we have had some experience with other political parties. You know, the red and the blue team, who then go back into the bunker and they pull down their veil of secrecy. Sometimes it was a red curtain that got pulled down. Sometimes it's a blue haze that covers them. And when they go in behind their secret, or into their secret abode, then things change. Then things can change. Member from Cape Breton West is hoping that the Liberals form government and that it's a minority government, because then he thinks he might have a shot at getting in cabinet if they form government under those kind of conditions. But you know, Mr. Chair, the reality is we have seen commitments made, and then those commitments end up either getting broken or dropped after an election. We saw that with what was once to be a vocational school. And, Mr. Chair, I firmly believe, I know this is desperately needed. Desperately needed. And the only way that you can pay proper respect to all those who have worked for so many years to bring this about is to ensure that it does. And I urge the minister to go back to the Premier. And I urge the Premier, or the minister, to urge the Premier to put some of the efforts that he and his staff put into putting out their propaganda pieces, put some of that effort into actually getting the tenders called. Because it is extremely important that something tangible be seen if there is to be somebody believing in it. I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, just one other question before I leave the Cobequid. It said in terms of talks about the total amount of money, and it is going to be a very substantial facility if all this is done. I don't deny that. But in that, there is the $26.5 million of government money, the $4 million which the foundation, which under the capable leadership of Mr. Farmer and the generosity of businesses and citizens and their hard group of volunteers who are working for him, they've committed to raise $4 million, and they're already at about $2.5 million, Mr. Chair, and that's nothing to be sneezed at, and they're all to be commended for their service and tireless efforts. But the remaining $3.5 million will come from community partnerships. I'm wondering if the minister could explain a little bit more about what those community partnerships really mean. Where's that money coming from? Exactly.
The Honourable Minister of Health, there's 1 minute remaining in the NDP's time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I believe the foundation has been having a bit of trouble finding some local partners, but I don't imagine that situation is going to stay that way for long. I think they will be successful. And I'd like to assure the member from Sackville-Cobequid that this project will be completed. I know it's proceeding slowly, but when we came to government, we had a list of schools the previous government had left, and with the exception of one which didn't need to be built. We committed to completing those schools and building the schools on that list. It was not, it seemed to us, a particularly political list. It seemed that it was a needed list, and that's what we did. And that's what we intend to do with the Cobequid Centre. We intend to proceed with that.
Here.
Thank you, Mr.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
No, order. Your time is up. No. Order. I recognize a member from Richmond.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity again to ask a few questions to the Minister of Health regarding her health budget and some of her previous commitments made to getting here into this House. Speaker, what we did see yesterday was the Minister refused to acknowledge the fact that although she made a campaign commitment that shutting down an industry would result in more hospital beds, yesterday, in fact, she said, no, I didn't mean more hospitals. She said I would keep the hospital beds that we had opened. And then we find out, lo and behold, she's actually seen under her administration 179 beds closed since 1999. So on two fronts, whichever way she wishes to spin it, she has failed to keep her commitment to the people of Halifax Citadel, and I'm sure they will remind her of that when she goes knocking on their doors in the next election and the people throughout the rest of this province. Speaker, one of the other statements that was made by the leader of the Tory party of the day was that it was his belief that the healthcare system could be fixed with $46 million, and that the healthcare system, what it really needed was a good dose of cutting administrative fat, because there was way too much administrative fat in the Department of Health. So I'd like to ask a few questions to the Minister regarding her own office. now that she is the Minister of Health. I'm curious, Minister, if you have the figures of what the cost of the Minister's office, along with your deputy, associate deputy, and whoever else you have now, what the cost of that was before you came to power in 1999, and what the cost of that office is today.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Chair, I do have the figures of what that office cost today, obviously, and last year. But, Mr. Chair, I think the member opposite knows full well that the estimate books do not contain 4-year running totals, so I would have to go back and get the information for him on the costs of 1999. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm wondering if the Minister could ask her finance person that's here with her if he could give us just an indication as to whether the cost in 1999 is compared to today, whether it is lower today or higher than what it was in 1999, without getting into specific figures. And I honestly believe there's a very simple answer to that question, Mr. Chair.
What the real figures, Neil?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, the financial officer says there have been no significant changes in the minister's office that he knows of, but obviously we can go back and get those figures. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I guess let's start off with a few easy questions then. Minister, I'm wondering if you could tell me at what point the position of Associate Deputy Minister was created.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was the end of May in the year 2000. Thank you.
The member for Richmond.
So we've got an Associate Deputy Minister that we've never had before in the Minister's office, and yet the cost of the administration of the Minister's office has not changed from 1999 to today. I'll give the Minister again an opportunity to indicate whether, as that as one example, if the cost has increased from 1999 to 2003 of the administration of her office.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
What number? Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there is a separate listing for the Associate Deputy's office in page 1210? In section 1210, page 1210. But Mr. Chair, I would point out that the department did have an assistant deputy minister before, which we no longer have, although we do have an associate deputy minister. And I would argue, Mr. Chair, that the stability of having one deputy has been a considerable cost and stress saving compared to the numbers of deputies that came and went under former administrations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Well, there goes the point again, Mr. Chair. You had a leader of the Tory party who said in 1999 that he was going to cut administrative fat in the Department of Health. Now we have a health minister who says, well, no, we actually needed more people in administration, Department of Health. She's saying that one deputy minister wasn't enough. We've actually had to add more people into the administration side because there wasn't enough. Well, once again, Mr. Speaker, but one more broken commitment by this government. They said that they could cut administrative fat, and they said that's where the real savings were in the Department of Health. Now we know that they've actually increased the amount of staff. But, Speaker, now that we've gotten that acknowledgement from the Minister, the other point is that we have said all along, consistently, that this government does not have a realistic outcome-based plan for the Department of Health. They've continued to pour money into the department year after year spending has increased under the department. This under the administration, which said in 1999, healthcare has enough money. It just needs to be better spent and better allocated. Cut the administrative fat, and we have enough. 1.5 billion is all you need to run the healthcare system in Nova Scotia. Well, here we are, and we've reached, under this budget, we're going to surpass the $2 billion mark. And so I asked the minister, if you do have a plan, which your government continues to show this glossy brochure with feel-good messages that you call it would be a plan, if that plan is viable, then I simply ask you, Minister, can you tell me today, under your plan, whether your department will need any additional money in next year's budget, or will it be able to continue operating with the money it has under the plan you're telling us that you have?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the member opposite well knows that there are always wage adjustments that need to be made. I'm sure he's also aware of the chart that I tabled earlier that shows that our health department administration is by far the lowest of any province in the country. And that is not our information, that is information from CIHI, a very respected national agency. That I would also add that our department's administration accounts for 1% of the budget, and that would compare very favorably with most administrative costs, i.e. in school boards or anywhere else, of 3%. So, Mr. Chair, there have been staff let go in the department. We try very hard to be administratively lean, and the bulk of the spending in healthcare goes on programs and services to people, not paying endless numbers, of more people here in the city. But systems do need people to run them. The bulk of the new spending in health is going to things like doctors, nurses, cardiac care, DHA services, mental health services, all the things that the Department of Health and the taxpayer fund in order to improve the health of Nova Scotians. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Mr. Chair, if this government has a plan, any sort of reasonable facsimile of a plan, it should be able to tell Nova Scotians today, this is how much it will cost next year and the year after and the year after that to run the Department of Health. If it's just wage adjustments, you must have some sort of projections as to what you can expect for wage adjustments to deal with that. Everyone else does. So I asked the minister again, under your plan, how much will it cost the Department of Health to be able to provide the services next year under the plan that you claim that you have? Could you please give us a figure for next year and the year after under the plan that you supposedly have for the cost of administrating our healthcare system?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The plan we have for healthcare was outlined in the document called Your Health Matters, which all members are familiar with. The plan we have for departmental spending for the next year is contained in the estimates that every member of the House has. Our plans for spending in the department the year after will be tabled with next year's budget estimates, as is the case. And we will not depart from that. We have a plan for healthcare in Nova Scotia. Obviously, it requires administration. We are giving multi-year funding to the district health authorities. We do not consider it necessary to give multi-year funding to ourselves. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
So we've got a plan, yet it doesn't deal with finances, Mr. Chair. It only deals with administration and providing programs, but finances, no, you got to wait for the budget next year, because under our plan, we don't look at how much it's going to cost to run the system. And next year, if you want to find out how much it'll cost for health, well, you got to wait till next year's budget. If you want to find out what it'll cost in 2 years, well, you're going to have to wait 2 years until that budget. And if you want to find out what it's going to cost for 3 years, well, you're going to have to wait for the third next budget. Mr. Chair, what is that? is an admission that this government does not have a plan. It cannot tell Nova Scotians today how much the healthcare system is going to cost next year, the year after, or the year after that. This is a government that said they had a plan. This is a government that said healthcare doesn't need more money. It needs a plan. It needs better management. What have they done? Year after year, what do we see? A couple of more $100 million. A couple of more $100 million. A couple more $100 million. And they say, we're investing in healthcare.
That's what we were going to do.
They said, the Liberals, back in '99, you don't need to invest in healthcare. There's enough money. The system can work. You need to better manage it. What we see today is an admission that this government, under 4 years, its number one commitment made to Nova Scotians, it has failed. This minister and her predecessor, year after year, stand up and say, we have a plan, yet budget after budget, they ask for more money and more money and more money because there is no plan. The spending continues. The lineups are still there for surgeries. People are in beds, in hallways, in emergency rooms because there isn't enough room. And there are still doctor shortages throughout the province, especially in my own riding, as I think the minister should be well aware of and the rest of the members of this House. So, Mr. Speaker, well, the former minister says that it's something to do with the MLA. Well, I can tell him when this MLA sat in a minority government for 18 months, we brought 5 new doctors to Richmond County. Something that has not been done. Something that has not been done under this government. Something has not been done because they've cancelled the incentive programs that were in place.
You took them away.
They've cancelled the incentive programs.
Yeah, and what did you
They
do?
have cancelled the incentive programs that were there, and they've failed on that. But, Mr. Speaker, I ask the minister again, under your plan, the plan you say you have, how much will it cost the healthcare system next year and the year after under the plan you say you have for healthcare?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, we have already announced 7% increases year over year for non-wage costs for the DHAs. That is part of our plan. In terms of care, Your Health Matters outlines our plan. In terms of departmental spending this year, our plan is here in the estimate books. In terms of long-term care, we have outlined our 4-year plan. In terms of the funding that's going to be available for health care in Nova Scotia, we have a good idea of what those needs are going to be. However, what we have no plans to do, and I presume this is part of the new Liberal election platform that's going to be announced this weekend, is to do budget estimates for all departments for 3 years in 1 year. That seems to be what the member opposite is suggesting that we should be doing. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Mr. Chair, the minister says it is unreasonable to ask her to be able to tell us what is going to cost her department for the next 3 years and to give us an idea of what her vision is, what her plan is. And that right there, Mr. Speaker, is a true admission of what sort of Tory administration we have in this province. To say that it is unreasonable to ask how much will it cost the taxpayers next year and the year after for a healthcare system. This coming from a minister who stands in the House and says we have a plan, we know where the plan's going to bring us, we know what the outcomes are going to be. Yet when you ask her about the plan, she can't give us any answers. And then when she doesn't give an answer, some of the Minister of Tourism and the rest of them chirp out little things, try to distract from the fact that their Minister of Health can't answer the questions. Now I ask you, Minister, you said that you have a plan in this book you referred to, you waved it, your glossy brochure, I think it's Your Health Matters. Here's a very simple question. Under the plan outlined in Your Health Matters, how much is it going to cost to be able to deliver the plan outlined in that brochure?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, the plan, as outlined, will cost what we have spent over the last several years, plus what we were spending this year, and plus monies that will be invested that we have announced over the next several years. And then other things will crop up, which we cannot plan for, but which we will have the money for. There is a difference Mr. Chair, between not having a plan and having a member of the opposition not like the plan. And there is a difference between having a plan of how to spend very carefully the money that we know we have than having a plan to borrow $600 million for operating costs without a plan. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Mr. Speaker, $600 million later is where you're at, Minister, since 1999. Not borrowed, 521 million's borrowed, Minister. Ask your Minister of Finance. That's the legacy that you will have. 521 million is what you've borrowed. You're spending over $100 million again this year, most of it from Ottawa. You are saying you have a plan. Minister, a plan must have a price tag on it. It must have a vision as to what the cost will be. Under your government, we are now to the point that 44% of the total revenues of this province are going into the health department, and there is no end in sight. I ask the minister again, what is the total cost to deliver a sustainable healthcare system in Nova Scotia under the plan that you claim you have? Tell us, what will it cost year in, year out to deliver the plan that you say you have for healthcare?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, 44% of a provincial budget is a very high percentage, and it is less in program spending is less than the percentage in some other provinces and higher than some. Healthcare is very, very expensive, but it's a priority of Nova Scotians. And the answer to the member opposite's question is that if you take a budget, the total health program delivery health budget in any one year, and add 7 to 8%, that is very likely what it's going to cost each year going on. And that is what all provinces and so on predict. The demand for health care will continue to rise, and the cost of providing that health care will continue to rise. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Madam Minister, is it your commitment today that next year, when you come to the budgetary process, your Department of Health, under your plan, will not ask for any more than 7% increase as to what you've outlined right there, and there won't be a need for any other funding other than that 7% under your plan? Will you make that commitment here today?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And what we're talking about today is our plan and this year's plan. And what I said is that the likely healthcare increases in future years will be around 7 to 8%. And that is what I'm prepared to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Is the minister saying that under her plan, next year she will be asking for another 17% increase in her current budget?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, one of the challenges is going to be to keep increases, not to the health department, but to the health and well-being of Nova Scotians, is to keep that increase to between 7 and 8%, not 17%. And that is what we will attempt to do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
For Richmond.
Well, she's the one who used a 17% figure, so that's, well, yes, you did. You can check to answer. That's why I was confused why you went from 7% to 17%. Anyways, is the minister prepared to commit today that under her plan, which she says is working, that she will not require any more than 7% additional funding for Department of Health next year under her plan? Will she make that commitment today, or is it going to be similar to the commitment she made to the people of Halifax Citadel with her postcard in 1999, which she hasn't come a country mile close to keeping?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And the member opposite, I'm glad to see, is assuming that I'll be doing this budget next year. I will commit to helping to provide the best health care possible to Nova Scotians within a limit of 7 to 8%. Obviously, Mr. Chair, we have no idea of what might happen in Nova Scotia between now and then. We could have a SARS outbreak. We could have something else happen that we don't know about. So obviously, I cannot make that kind of firm commitment the member opposite asks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Madam Minister, I'll tell you why I made that statement is because your own Deputy Premier informed us earlier in the day that it was his belief that the election would only be next year in 2004. So it was certainly no vote of confidence in your chances of next election. Why I made that statement, it was instead relying upon the sage advice of your Deputy Premier and his statement that he made earlier in the day. Madam Minister, in 1999, your leader, today's Premier, said he would fix the healthcare system in his first mandate. I ask you today, 4 years later, is our healthcare system fixed in your view?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, in my opinion, the healthcare system has come a long way. It is much more stable. The relationships between the providers and the districts and the department are much better. The department itself has been stabilized with the leadership of a deputy and associate deputy. So in those areas, I believe we are much better off. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Your Premier, in 1999, your leader said, in my first mandate, I, John Ham, will fix the healthcare system. I ask you again, Minister, 4 years later, is the healthcare system in Nova Scotia fixed?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I will repeat in fewer words what I said before. Our healthcare system is in much better shape than it was. A lot remains to be done. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Member for Richmond.
Speaker, it says here is on the first page of the Blue Book. I know the member from Guysborough Port Hawkesbury may have difficulty with this, but I'll read it for him. It says on page 1, as your Premier, my first priority will be to fix the healthcare system. We will make sure that when individual Nova Scotians need healthcare, it will be there for them. I ask you again, Minister, is the healthcare system fixed? And is the healthcare that when individual Nova Scotians need it, is it now there for them under your government?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, the healthcare system is in much better shape. And yes, healthcare is there for Nova Scotians when they need it. It is not always exactly what they want. It may not be in exactly the time frame it should be, but it is certainly there for them. We have an excellent healthcare system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Madam Minister, it's not there when the Glace Bay Emergency Room is closed. It's not there when the Strait Richmond Emergency Room is closed. And it's not there today when the Parsborough Emergency Room is closed. These are all things the Premier said he'd fix. It's not there for the people of Lardwes who have a doctor shortage. It's not there for the people of Ilmadam and Louisville area who have a doctor shortage, and every other community which is experiencing doctor shortages. The Premier said he would fix healthcare. We now have a minister who won't commit to saying that she doesn't need any additional funding in health other than administrative increases in costs. She now says, well, no, we might have a SARS outbreak. You know, everyone knows that there are some outside forces that any business plan could be affected by. Yet the minister cannot provide us with an accurate statement in saying this business plan is going to cost X number of dollars, barring any outside influences that were unpredicted. The fact that she cannot stand here and say this is what my plan is going to cost and here's how much money I will need to deliver it is a clear admission that this government does not have a plan. What do? They put out a glossy brochure. They take public taxpayers' money and they do advertising in the radio and papers, and when they hire more spin doctors rather than medical doctors to try to convince Nova Scotians that they have a plan for health care. Nova Scotians are not being fooled. And this is the number one priority the Premier staked his credibility on. This is the number one issue that even the Minister of Health, as a candidate in 1999, close an industry, open hospital beds. The facts now show that she has not lived up to that commitment. We don't know if she ever had any intentions of doing that. Yesterday she wouldn't tell us or admit that she has failed to live up to that commitment. But the facts clearly are she hasn't lived up to her commitment to her constituents, and the Premier certainly hasn't lived up to his commitment to Nova Scotians, because what he thought was such a simple task, to fix health care in 1999, hundreds of million dollars later, 4 years later, the minister cannot stand and say we fixed the health care system. That is the overall assessment of this government. That is the message that we will be bringing to the people. I can tell you in my own communities, we had programs in place. The rural physician incentive program, that was working. It was working well. Was it perfect? No. But it was working. It brought physicians in. What did this government do? It made cuts to that program. It started reducing the guarantee, started reducing the amount of time, and where do we find ourselves today? Another doctor shortage in Richmond County. Other doctor shortages throughout the province. Surprise, surprise. Yet, this Premier said that wouldn't happen under his government. The straight Richmond emergency room under John Ham has been closed for longer than it has been opened under this government. That is the legacy for Richmond County. That is the legacy of health care. Someone who said they would fix health care. Someone who said, trust me, I am a family physician. I will make sure. He stood in here and he said, under my administration, the straight Richmond will have a doctor. The emergency room will not be closed. But the facts show it has been closed longer than it has been opened in the 4 years under this Tory administration. That is the legacy that will be left. And Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to start talking about a few issues which are near and dear to me in Richmond County. That first issue I raised with the minister in question period last week, and it was painfully obvious that the number one file for the people of Richmond County, the minister had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. And that was very disappointing, I must say, Mr. Chairman. I'd say it's disappointing even from her staff's perspective, that with all the work that has been done by her staff, that their own minister had no idea of this very important file for the people of Richmond County and surrounding areas. That file, Minister, is the Richmond Villa, which you clearly had absolutely no idea about when I raised in question period last week. Hansard will clearly reflect that, Mr. Chairman. Any independent source who reads it will clearly know the minister had no idea. Yet here is a long-term care facility that is of extreme importance, both to the health and the economy of the Richmond County, and yet the Minister of Health had no idea what I was referring to. I don't even know if she knew what the Richmond Villa was. I asked today for the Minister to explain. Her own department said they would negotiate with the Department of Housing to build a new villa. They prepared a timeline. And before I continue, I want to say, as the MLA for Richmond, and having talked to a number of people involved in the process, that I know that the Associate Deputy Minister, I know that some of the names that I'm familiar with, Mr. Lampier, Mr. Menzies, the Associate Deputy Minister, Madame Logue Burley, that these people I know have worked hard on this file. And I thank them for that, because it's an extremely important matter for the people of Richmond County, for the residents who are in that facility, who know that they're in a facility which has already failed an assessment. And they know that they should no longer be in that facility. There's their family members who are very anxious. They would have been calling. They are worried that their loved ones are in a facility which is not a healthy environment for them. And the staff themselves who must work in this facility day in, day out, who know themselves that this facility has failed the assessment. I asked the minister, it is her government that told the people of Richmond County that under their plan, along with the Department of Housing, site selection was set to begin in June of last year. Construction was supposed to start in the fall of 2002. Construction was to continue throughout 2003 with a target of the fall as the date when residents would move into the new facility. Mr. Speaker, the fact is there's no site selection done. There's no facility under construction. Right now, there's none in sight. I asked the minister, can you please explain to the people of Richmond County and to me what happened between your department and the Department of Housing that has resulted in the fact that there's not a Richmond Villa anywheres in sight?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, this was and is a pilot, and it has taken longer than we thought it would. However, the Department of Transportation and Public Works has evaluated a couple of sites, and I can assure the member from Richmond that we will begin construction of the villa sometime this year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, June of last year is when the site selection process was supposed to be completed. We are now in April, a year later. We are soon approaching 1 full year since your site selection was supposed to be completed. I asked the minister again, what happened? What happened in your own department that has caused such a delay to the construction of the new Richmond Villa?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, staff say they had not heard those dates, but regardless of that, some sites have been evaluated, and although the project has been delayed, it will proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would be more than happy, Minister, to provide you with the timetables set out by your own department. If you don't have them, I can make a phone call and have them faxed up to me fairly quickly, although it's Friday. It might take me till Monday, but this is a timetable that came from your department, Minister. It's not something we've made up. It's actually got a nice little table, and it's very professionally set out, specific dates, site selection, start construction going on, when the resident's going to move in. Like, this is, it alarms me that you're not aware of this, and that you say that your staff is not aware of this. So, needless to say, that does cause me a little bit of concern when you say that the villa is a priority for you. Is it the minister's statement today? She keeps referring to the site selection process. Now that's that's news to me. Is it the minister's statement today that the site selection process is why we have encountered the delays to date? Is that what the minister is saying?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it's not. The site selection process, has not been the only issue. It's been one issue. Another issue was dealing with the Department of Housing and the municipality and trying to get certain conditions in place to meet the objectives of the pilot. So it was a number of factors. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, the reason that this causes such alarm is that the Department of Health, the municipality was more than prepared to go in, build a new facility, operate it, and to do that since the 2000 report. Instead, I know the department had good intentions, and we are pleased that the Richmond Villa will be a pilot. Make no mistake, we are looking forward to that. I think it's going to be an example. I certainly agree with the concept. I think it's going to be an example to be followed for communities from here on forward with long-term care facilities. Yet, when you find out that the Department of Health is negotiating with the Department of Housing, only to be told later that those negotiations have broken off, and now the department almost wants to return back to the initial suggestion from the municipality, it is a little bit disheartening. And Minister, I'm not making up these concerns. I have the family members who are calling me, who are very concerned and who said, look, you told me last year that you had a chart from the Department of Health that said, you gave me the dates of June for site selection, you gave me the dates for this. What went wrong? And I'm the one who has to tell them, well, I've got to try to find out what went wrong, because this is the Department of Health's own time frame. The former minister said we're on target, we're moving forward. He made the commitment last year that those dates would be met, that all was well, and all of a sudden it's gone off the rails. The minister made a statement earlier, and I want to ask her today, will she commit today that construction, site selection of the new Richmond Villa will be underway and that construction will actually begin before the end of this calendar year?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, this will occur before the end of the fiscal year. We don't have an exact date or dates, but before the end of the fiscal year, yes, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Well, Mr. Chair, the Minister will know that the fiscal year ends March 31st. So that's almost a year away from now. Are you saying that you cannot commit that a new facility will begin earlier than 1 year from now? I ask you again, Minister, you've seen the delays that have taken place here. You're aware of the anxieties of the family members, of the staff, and of the residents who are there. I ask you again, Minister, will you commit that site selection and construction of the new Richmond Villa will begin this calendar year?
The Honourable Minister of Health. There are 3 minutes remaining in this session.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I will recommit to having these things take place before the end of the fiscal year, knowing that very likely construction would not be starting midwinter. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
The member for Richmond.
Mr. Speaker, in this day and age, construction can start any time of the year, and the Minister knows that well. To say that because it's winter there won't be construction, that's why she won't commit, is disappointing to say the least, and I know it'll be disappointing for the people of Richmond County. But I know my time is very short, Minister, and I may have the opportunity to come back to this, but one of the elements that they're looking at phasing in with this pilot project would be there is a daycare center run by the Madame Daycare Center that is in St. Peter's, and one of the aspects is they would like to have, as part of this new villa, the daycare being a permanent part of this, which I think the concept is great. The idea that children would be interacting with the clients at the villa and the learning process would be shared there, and the whole healthy environment for the clients would be there. Will the Minister commit today that her department will continue to work with the Madame Daycare Center to ensure that the daycare does become part of the new Richmond Villa complex?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will commit to that. That's still part of the planning process, and it is one of the aspects of the pilot that makes it the most interesting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to do your introduction now, member for Richmond? A minute and a half. All right.
Thank you, Minister, because I had received some information that there was some concern that the talks along the line with the daycare were not going as smoothly as we had hoped, and that because deadlines are being reached, that there had been some sort of communication from the department saying that unless clear financial commitments were going to be made by the daycare, that they may be phased out of this project. So I would urge the Minister to keep that as part of it. I'm pleased to see even the Minister thinks it is an interesting concept. I fully agree. And again, in my short time that I have, Minister, you've got a very hard-working Villa board there, led by Chairman Steve Sampson, and the board members who are there, CAO Louis Degout, Councillor Steve McNeil, and some community members who are on that. They are very committed to seeing a new facility. They have been so since the year 2000, and you have a staff that is under a great deal of anxiety there because of the facility. You have the residents who are concerned, and you have the family members of those residents who want to see a new facility. At the same time, this is an important economic generator for Richmond. I urge you to continue to push on this and to take it very seriously.
Order. Thank you. Time allotted for the 4 hours of estimates has ended for the day. The member for Richmond on an introduction.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the West Gallery, I have the pleasure of introducing today a couple of visitors to our city. They managed to get across the causeway. Obviously, security is lacking at our good causeway. But pay no attention to the fact that the Liberal AGM is taking place this weekend as to why they might be in our good city. But I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Aubrey Cameron, who is the president of the Glace Bay Liberal Association, and Mr. Francis Gillis, who's been a long-time campaign worker, and both are tremendous supporters of my good colleague from Glace Bay, and I'd ask them both to rise and receive the warm welcome of the House.
Thank you. I recognize the Deputy Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I ask that the committee now rise and report progress.
Chairman, on the Committee of the Whole House on Supply reports.
The committee has met and made considerable progress and begs leave to sit again.
Is it agreed? The Honourable Government House Leader, Honourable Deputy Government House Leader on Monday's hours and order of business.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House now rise and adjourn to set again on Monday, the hours being 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. At that time, we'll go through our daily routine, 4 hours of estimates, and we're going to do some public bills for second reading, number 1, 3, 9, 11, 17, and 28. And when we collect and when we agree to finish those bills, we'll finish for the day. Thank you.
Motion is the House adjourned till 2 p.m. on Monday. Is it agreed? All those in favor say aye. Contrary minded nay. Motion is carried. The House is adjourned till 2 p.m. Monday.